Vijay, 1 second. Purna, have we gone live on YouTube also?
Yes, sir, right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Namaste, I'm Vijeta AnanthKumar. So I'm a public policy researcher and a student of economics at Azim Premji University. And I'm honored to be part of this session today. So today we have under AnanthKumar Pratishthana, we are organizing Nation First Dialogues on the topic AtmaNirbhar Bharat, 5G technology opportunities and readiness. So we have some esteemed guests with us who will be addressing us today. So we have Professor Abhay Karandikar, who is the director of IIT Kanpur. Namaste, sir. We will also be joined by Shri Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji, Honorable Member of Parliament. We will also be presided by Professor P.V. Krishnabhat, the Chairman of AnanthKumar Pratishthana, a noted educationist and Chancellor of Odisha Open University. We have also been joined by some of our core AnanthKumar Pratishthana members, as well as our well-wishers and family and friends. So to begin, we have just to have a few instructions about, since we are going to start this online session, I request everybody to stay on mute, and we are on live on YouTube through AnanthKumar Pratishthana channel. So welcome again for Nation First Dialogues on 5G technology, opportunities and readiness. So to start off, I would like to welcome our trustee of AnanthKumar Pratishthana, Dr. Tejaswini Ananthkumar, who is the chairperson of Adamya Chetana Foundation. And she is an engineer herself who has worked with the Defense Ministry in the past. So welcome, ma'am. I would request you to please address the audience and kick off today's Nation First Dialogue session on AtmaNirbhar Bharat, 5G technology, opportunities and readiness.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming all of you for the Nation First Dialogue, Chapter 4 on AtmaNirbhar Bharat, 5G, opportunities and readiness. I welcome the chief speaker of today, director of IIT Kanpur, who is friend of our family, Dr. Abhay Karandikar, for today's event. And also I would like to welcome Shri Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji, Member of Parliament, and also a friend of ours since decades, to this special program of today. And also we have many dignitaries today with us. We have Shri Kota Harinarayan, who was my mentor, who was a lead. He was heading Aeronautical Development Agency, Padma Vibhushan. Professor Shri Kota Harinarayan is there with us today. I welcome him for this program. It is honor to have him in our Nation First Dialogue program. And also we have Professor P.V. Krishnabhat, our chairperson, mentor of AnanthKumar ji, who was National President of Vidyarthi Parishad, great educationist with us. Dr. Vishnukhan Chatpalichi, Shri Inamdar, Shri Pradeep Oak, Shri Raju Banu, Shri Subramanya, all these people have been taking forward Pratisthana forward. And also we have Shri Subhash Chandra with us. I'm able to see him, his video is on. He has more than 450 mobile outlets in India. So I especially invited him. He is there with us today. He is head of founder and managing director of Sangeeta Mobiles. He's there with us. We have Shri Sushit Kumar, who is worked day and night. Even this Nation First Dialogue, even the previous Nation First Dialogue on artificial intelligence in public life, he was one of the chief organizers of today's program. We have so many other dignitaries today with us. I welcome all of them to this event. AnanthKumar Pratishthana AnanthKumar Pratishthana started its journey on 22nd September 2019 on the 60th birthday of Shri Ananthkumar. As you know, Ananthkumar ji started his public life when he was 16, and from the age of 16, he worked for the nation building for the betterment of the society since his last breath and till his last breath. And he created a special mark in every area where he worked. Active Vidyarthi Parishad member under the guidance of Shri Dattatreya Usbaleji. He motivated thousands of youth, students, and brought them into public life, involved them in nation building. And later, as a member of Bharatiya Janata Party, he along with Shri Yediyurappa ji, they opened the gate for BJP to South India as a national national general secretary of BJP. He worked relentlessly for the party and also as a minister in Atalji's government, as a civil aviation minister, he created long-lasting development projects for the society, for the nation, and also as a member of the cabinet of Narendra Modi ji. He started Janaushadhi program. He was instrumental in bringing the neem-coated urea. Many such programs to his credit, and he is always remembered by his friends, his relatives, his followers for his special qualities of Vyaktitva, Netrutva, and Kartrutva. And AnanthKumar Pratishthana wants to take forward that legacy, and we would like to motivate the present leaders and also the youngsters to work for the society, to work for the nation. And keeping that in mind, we have plans to start Ananthkumar in memory of Shri Ananthkumar. We would like to start a Institute of Public Policy and Leadership. With regard to keeping this in mind, we've been doing the Nation First Dialogue programs, and today is the fourth one in this series. And before I conclude, I would like to tell you a few more things, because we know we are all in a most difficult situation today. The country or even the world is facing one of the difficult times of their life, and I think three things which are taking us forward, which we all have to keep in mind. One is we all today need best of the best health infrastructure. We have to keep ourselves safe, support others also in this difficult times. We need to look at the vaccine, the medicines, oxygen, and of course follow all the protocols required for COVID. And the second one is we all have to ensure that everyone gets safe food, good food, and nutritious food. And the third most important, many a times we neglect, is the best communication systems which will take us along, which are bringing the moral support to all of us, because we are all sitting at home, many are under quarantine. In this situation, I think this topic of 5G, how many asked me how is it relevant? Of course, without the good communication systems, without the communication technology, I don't know how we would have survived these difficult times. And these are as an engineer in electronics and communication, many of my classmates also joined this program. I would like to tell all of you, because I think probably this one of the India being one of the pioneers in communication technology, probably this is giving us the moral boost, and we need to work more on this and make sure that with the best of the best technologies, we will save some more lives. We can give, we can definitely support the society in a better way. So I welcome all of you for this special event, AtmaNirbhar Bharat 5G opportunities and readiness. I welcome all of them, those who are in part of this WebEx link, and also because the hall is full, many are watching this program through YouTube. We can definitely communicate with them through chat. Definitely, I am sure the speakers will answer their questions. We'll use the chat as the medium of communication. I welcome all of them who are watching the program through YouTube and who also have able to join this WebEx series. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejaswini ma'am, for addressing the audience. Moving forward, I would like to invite Dr. Vishnukhan Chatpalichi, an executive committee member of AnanthKumar Pratishthana, the Vice Chancellor of Karnataka State Rural Development and Panchayati Raj University in Gadag. Welcome, sir. I would request you to please tell us a bit more about AnanthKumar Pratishthana and the Nation First Dialogues. Sir, you're on mute. I request you to please unmute yourself. We're unable to hear you.
Namaskara. Gauravanvita Professor P.V. Krishna. ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದಲ್ಲ?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
ಗೌರವಾನ್ವಿತ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ P.V. ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಭಟ್ಜಿ ಅವರೇ, ಆದರಣೀಯರಾದ ರಾಜೀವ್ ಚಂದ್ರಶೇಖರ್ ಅವರೇ, ಅಭಯ್ ಕರಂದಿಕರ್ ಅವರೇ, ತೇಜಸ್ವಿನಿ ಅವರೇ, ಅನಂತಕುಮಾರ್ ಪ್ರತಿಷ್ಠಾನದ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಶ್ವಸ್ತ ಮಂಡಳಿಯವರೇ ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರೇ, ಇವತ್ತು ಸುಯೋಗದಿಂದ ಈ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ಸಿರೀಸ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಮಹತ್ವದ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ದಿವಸ ಇದೆ. ಟುಡೇ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಪಂಚಾಯತ್ ರಾಜ್ ಡೇ. National Panchayat Raj, which tried to build leaders across the country. And Will Durant, American historian, has said that India was the motherland of our race, and Sanskrit is the mother of Europe's languages. She was the mother of our philosophy, mother through the Arabs of much of our mathematics, mother through the Buddha of the ideals embodied in Christianity, mother through the village community of self-government and democracy. Mother India is in many ways the mother of us all. So this Nation First Dialogue is a rich tribute to AnanthKumar on this day of National Panchayat Raj. Being a childhood friend since 1975 to 12th November 2018, his memories are still alive. He was a Karyakarta with all leadership qualities since his childhood, coming from a patriotic family. A remarkable leader who entered into a public life at a young age by getting cultured in RSS and honed his leadership skills in ABVP. His untimely death and unfinished task has put the onus on all his well-wishers and friends to continue the task of building the nation through AnanthKumar Pratishthana. AnanthKumar Pratishthana's primary focus is to create, mold, inspire the younger generation with leadership skills in the indigenous background for the 21st century. I think today's talk or the dialogue which will continue as a fourth series or the fourth chapter, that itself signifies that we need a continuous dialogue, not only a talk. Talk, walk and action, which AnanthKumar personally believed. What he talked, he tried to preach. What he preached, he tried to promote and inspire the younger generation. He always looked at forecasted things and tried to build the values that are required for the 21st century. And today's talk, as Tejaswani ji said that, and there is a Hindi song, 2G, 4G, 3G, 4G, 1-2 का 4 नहीं है, 1-2 का 5 है अब ये. We are looking at 5G. And this is what AnanthKumar Pratishthana always looks at. What is required for the future? And that is to be built over a period of time. And the framework of AnanthKumar Pratishthana is the focus on the younger generation. And this younger generation, as the Prime Minister has always been saying, that we need to be self-reliant. We were Vishwaguru and we have to become Vishwaguru. And for that, AtmaNirbhar Bharat, through the application of technology and creating innumerable leaders at the grassroots, at the national level. So policies are there, but these policies are to be implemented at the ground level. And if these policies are to be implemented at the ground level, we need to provide the training inputs. And that's what AKP is going to plan and focus. The second focus is on protection, preservation, and promotion of environment to bring in a change for sustainable, eco-friendly society. And as again referred, health has been our primary, and at this pandemic situation, we realize that health is more important along with education and our basic needs. AKP envisions of providing affordable, quality health care to all its brethren. With the kind support of the Karnataka state government and all the well-wishers of AnanthKumar, the Pratishthan is striving hard and will strive hard through the various programs and activities to reach out the message and ideology which AnanthKumar presented throughout his lifetime. We look forward and appeal to all of you, please support, involve, and be an active volunteer of this nascent organization and try to build this nation by dialogue and by action. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vishnukhan Chatpalichi, for sharing with us the main objectives of AnanthKumar Pratishthana and the objectives of this unique platform of Nation First Dialogues. This chapter of Nation First Dialogues, we will be, as you rightly mentioned, sir, we have some esteemed guests and some area experts of in the technology sector to discuss 5G technology and to build a AtmaNirbhar Bharat with 5G technology, its opportunities and readiness. I think it's it's an extremely interesting topic given how it might affect our everyday lives. Um, I think 1G brought us our first cell phones. 2G brought us let us text for the first time. 3G brought us online. 4G delivered the speed that we enjoy today. And 5G is only a way forward from there. That is almost 10 times faster than what 4G is. And imagine downloading a HD movie in less than a second. And now I think we can just imagine what this can change. Whether it's virtual reality, whether it's autonomous driving, I think now it's really the sky is the limit. I would like to invite, moving forward, I would like to invite Sujit Kumarji, the founder of Mind Matrix and a member of IIT Alumni Association, to please address the audience and also to welcome our esteemed guest, Professor Abhay Karandikar.
Sujit, before that, we have one more esteemed guest, Shri Iranna Kadadiji, who is a member of Parliament, Raj Sabha. He is from Belgaum, very good friend of AnanthKumar ji. ಮಾನ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಹಿರಣ್ಣ ಕಡಾಡಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು ಕೋರ್ತೀನಿ. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Sujit ji, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Vijeta. Indeed, it's a pleasure to be here, a part of this dialogue series. It is a great initiative, which indeed it connects our policy, technology. It's an absolutely right blend of that. And as Vijeta, you mentioned, this topic, today's topic, AtmaNirbhar Bharat, 5G opportunity and readiness. Indeed, it's very, 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 very interesting. You mentioned about 1G to 5G journey, and you mentioned about this, how is that going to, say, for example, download the HD movie in a second. Not only it will entertain, it is going to change the many other aspects of life. That's what I believe. Especially moving towards AtmaNirbhar Bharat, it is going to play a major role. In fact, AtmaNirbhar Bharat, which is also known as Self-Reliant India, it's a vision of our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, announced by him on 2nd May 2020. But basically, the aim of AtmaNirbhar Bharat will make country and its citizen independent and self-reliant in all senses. With the 5 pillars, if you look at the 5 pillars of this AtmaNirbhar Bharat, which are economy, infrastructure, system, vibrant demography, and demand. We know that internet and communication is going to play a major role in the most of these pillars. And in fact, that's what Tejaswini madam was mentioning. Being a communication engineer herself, she could realize how important this communication is going to be in the role of communication in this AtmaNirbhar Bharat. Very, very, very nicely well said, ma'am. With this 5G network, not only that communication, we look forward at a bright and promising years ahead. Really, we are looking forward for that. It is especially interesting to see how 5G is both evolutionary as well as revolutionary. And how is that it can bring a revolution in this country. I'm sure this 5G will open the various new opportunities. Not just in the big cities where we have all the communication network presently available, but it will bring the new opportunity, especially from the untouched part of this country. It could be the driver that are likely to transform Indian society itself, accelerating to an unprecedented growth. We need to apply 5G in the areas of health, rural connectivity, education, disaster management, public safety, etc. And we should be able to propel ourselves further in becoming AtmaNirbhar Bharat with this 5G technology. In fact, to throw more lights on this opportunity and readiness, today we have our eminent speakers, who is subject matter expert also, was part of various government committees in the framing this policy. Not only he knows the inside of the bits of the communication, he is also the pulse of the people, pulse of this nation. And we have today, really, indeed, it is a pleasure for me to introduce Professor Abhay Karandikar, an educationist and researchist. I'll just briefly read his bio, although he's a very well-known figure. Doesn't need an introduction, but still I'll read this briefly. Professor Karandikar is the currently director in Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, one of the premier technical institute of India. Before joining IIT Kanpur as a director in April 2018, he served as Institute Chair Professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, Mumbai. He also served as Dean of Faculty Affairs and Head of the Electrical Engineering Department at IIT Bombay. He has spearheaded a national effort in setting up Telecom Standards Development Society of India, India's standard body for telecom with participation of all stakeholders. Professor Karandikar was the founding member and the former chairman of TSDSI. He was also a member part-time of Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, we call it TRAI, from January 2017 to January 2020. He served on the board of several companies and has founded and mentored startups in telecom and networking. He was member of high-level forum on 5G, set up by the Government of India, and chaired the 5G Spectrum Policy Task Force. Professor Karandikar has several patent issuing and pending, contributed to IEEE 3GPP standards, contributed chapters in books, and large number of papers in international journals and conferences in his credit. Sir has awarded with IEEE SES standards in December 2016 in New Jersey. His team also won Mozilla Open Innovation Challenge Prize in March 2017 for his work in the rural broadband and digital empowerment in rural India. He is also co-author of the paper, which won the Best Paper Award and ACAB MobiHawks 2009 workshop and Indoor and Outdoor Small Cell WIO 2014 and finalist for the Best Paper and Award in IEEE 2014 conference. Let's put our hand together by pressing the like button on your YouTube channel. Let us put our hand together by pressing like button on our YouTube channel and welcome Professor Abhay. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, namaskar, and a very warm greetings to all the esteemed colleagues and distinguished guests, members of also the AnanthKumar Pratishthana. It is indeed my great privilege and honor to present some of the thoughts, and I believe that this is also an important topic, as was pointed out by Tejaswini Madam, that apart from health and education, given the current scenario, the communications technology has become really extremely important. And I will also point out why it is important from the strategic point of view also. And that is why, you know, it is, I would say it is one of the most important, you know, segments of any government's policy. So let me share some thoughts. I'll share my slides. I hope everyone is able to see the slides.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is a brief agenda. I will just briefly tell you what is 5G, although Vijeta has already mentioned about that. But nevertheless, I'll take 30 seconds to tell that. Then what is happening in terms of technology development throughout the world and how India is positioned, and what is the way forward. And I think some of these thoughts, and I think I believe that this is very important from the point of view of nation first, in the sense that we have to really put the interests of our nation first before anything. And I think I would really reorient my talks in that direction also. And there are some cause of concerns, and I think it is important that we collectively address that. First of all, key national verticals, if you see today, whether it is economic, which includes retails, agriculture, manufacturing, banking, financial institutions, or societal, which includes health, education, governance, or security, which is either the cyber security or in general defense or intelligence. All verticals are increasingly relying on the communication services, information and communications technology. And therefore, the telecommunication infrastructure is actually becoming the backbone of several key national verticals. And in fact, economics sovereignty and national sovereignty are actually going to be dictated by the IPR ownerships. In fact, many countries are using their intellectual property reserves to position even their trade policy. And what is happening, interestingly, is that majority of the IPR, as we go from 2G to 3G to 5G, so till 3G, 90% of the intellectual property rights were held by the US and the Europe. But as we move towards the 5G, the shift has definitely now happened towards the Asian Pacific countries. And mainly, in this Asia Pacific, the most important countries are China and South Korea. In fact, I will show that they together hold a significant percentage of the IPR. So this is not just about the security, but this is actually about shift in the world's power balance. And in the coming years, maybe in the next 5 years or in the next decades, cyber physical systems, which includes 5G and AI, is going to control the world power. And therefore, ownership of these technology is extremely important. And in that sense, our country to become AtmaNirbhar in these areas is not only critical for economic prosperity, but also for the strategic security. So just, I will take a few seconds to explain you about what are the capabilities of the 5G system. As was mentioned that, we are going to get, very high peak data rates of the order of 20 gigabits per second. So this will be a technology which will become just like, a fiber, you can call it as a wireless fiber with a very high peak data rate of 100 megabits per second. And one can have a very, very low latency of the order of 4 milliseconds. And finally, we can have a large number of devices that can be connected to each other. In fact, of the order of 10 to the power 6 in per square kilometers. And this is the kind of things that we can get, today in the 5G system. So all are possible by one systems that not only you can get very high throughput, but at the same time, you can get very low latencies, and simultaneously you can connect billions of devices. So these are really the possibilities, and that opens up huge number of applications and cutting across several verticals and disciplines. So this is not a technology just for making phone call or downloading on the internet. This is a technology which is going to touch every vertical, whether it is agriculture, whether it is healthcare, whether it is transportation, and whether it is education and so on. So this is going to be like an all-pervasive digital communications. We are not only going to have human-to-human communications and human-to-machine communications, but machine-to-machine communications. So of course, we will have a very high-speed broadband. You would be able to download, an HD video. But more importantly, every part of the everyday lives, like whether it is a home or a city or your wearables or your agriculture or your manufacturing, your factory automations, industry, or your public safety or your cars, every part of the economy is going to be touched by this technology, and therefore in that sense it is going to be really all pervasive. Now let's pause for a time being and see what are the characteristics of communications technology. In general, the communications technology have been driven by very rapid changes that have been taken place in the wireless technology. When we go from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, there are innovations in communications theory like almost, every year. But more importantly, in the 5G that has happened is a convergence of computing and communications. And that means there is an increased softwareizations. And I will tell you that why, India can really exploit this opportunity. In 2G and 3G technology, you will have very specialized hardware, specialized base stations, specialized cell phones. But going forward in the 5G, all of them can be implemented in software almost on off-the-shelf hardwares or servers. There is happening commoditization of networks, and finally, the increased usage of cloud and edge computing based paradigm are increasingly coming into the 5G systems. So that means, given our country's prowess in the software industry, there is a huge opportunity for us for making a leapfrog into the future communications technology that is going to be dictated by the 5G and beyond innovations. The other aspect is that, this technology is typically capital intensive. They require, of course, costly equipments, but most importantly, being a wireless technology, it requires a costly resource, that is the spectrum license, and of course, the skilled manpower. And I will tell you how, we can address some of these. But one of the most important aspects of the communications technology are they are standards driven. There are global bodies which drive the development of the technology, which is ITU, 3GPP or IEEE, and that is because you want to make the equipment, interoperable. And here, we had a big problem. India did not have a participation in the standards body till 4G, and therefore, as a result, we did not hold, a maneuver or our sort of leadership roles in these technologies. And as a result, even India being the second largest telecom market in the world, it was not possible to design, develop, and manufacture indigenous equipments because most of the IPRs were held by the foreign companies. So if you look at the telecom standards landscape, 3GPP is the main partnership project which drives the next generation wireless standards. Now, this partnership project comprises of the global standards development organizations, which is European ATSI or Americans ATIS or ARIBE of Japan and so on. Now, our participation in the 3GPP was not possible until 2014 because the participation in these standards bodies can happen only through the partner standards development organizations. And till 2014, India did not have any of our own telecom standards development organizations. I, along with several other stakeholders and academics, had taken the lead in setting up the India's first standards telecom body, that is TSDSI, and in 2015. TSDSI became an organizational partner of 3GPP along with Europe, US, Japan, South Korea, and China. And that is where, now we have started making our footprint in the last, 4 or 5 years. IEEE is another body, but in IEEE, the individual or entities can participate. And finally, the ITU defines the requirements of new technology and spectrum harmonizations, but most of the time the ITU really adopts either the 3GPP or IEEE standards as the global standards. So this is what our TSDSI's objective was, that to develop, promote, and standardize the India's specific technology and check our requirements to the global standards organizations. One of the key contributions that we made in the last 1 or 2 years in the 5G was to suggest in India's specific requirements of low mobility, large scale, which covers the rural use case of India, which got accepted into the ITU's 5G standard. And this has been really a breakthrough that happened, last year in 2018-19. And I would say that here really now there's an opportunity for us to take it forward and grow in leaps and bounds from here onwards. And I will just briefly come to this low mobility, large cell, Now, if you look at what is the scenario of India versus world, as I already mentioned that while India has been the second largest telecom market in the world, there are very few IPRs and patents. Most of our technology is imported. Our cell phones have been imported, our base stations are imported, our network devices are imported, and we have not been doing much contribution to global standardization efforts. That has started now happening after we have formed the TSDSI. And more importantly, there has been a very handful of Indian product companies, very few I know in the Bangalore, but, we have to really grow beyond that. And finally, of course, there is a little interactions between the academia and the industry. Just to give you a brief of what is the innovations scenario in the telecom sectors, these are really the patents which have been granted in the core ICT technologies. And you can see really that China has really competed with the US very well in the last 3-4 years, while we continue to really lag significantly behind. In fact, in the 5G technology, if you want to see what is the contributions in the standards, and this is the graph, as you can see in terms of standards participation, while with the formation of TSDSI, we have now few members participating, but the participations of China and Europe has been very, very significant. And if you see from the country's point of view, how many IPRs have been accepted in the standards, you can see companies like Huawei and Nokia and Ericsson have been really leading in the world. And this is really a cause of concerns for us, and we really need to sort of make significant headway in these directions. So these aspects have really two implications. One is, of course, the economic, because as I already mentioned, that beyond 5G technologies are going to touch every aspect of the key national vertical, and therefore it will affect the future economic growth. So that is obviously an economic factor. But more importantly, since the 5G will become, the bedrock of the telecom infrastructure, this will pose a major security risk if all pervasive cyber physical systems are built on the imported systems. So we have really the economic implications, and we have the security implications that we really need to worry about. And if you look at the scenario in India, we have a very small manufacturing and the product development base. Although, large global companies like Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, all have R&D centers in India, but there have been a very few Indian product companies. I mean, I know a few like Tejas or Sankhya and so on. And there are few mobile handsets companies, but hardly, any intellectual property rights. And now we have started making, presence in the global telecom standards, but that's not really enough because, we have less focus on the standardizations. Now, I will just tell you what, collectively we are doing and what are the opportunities. There is a significant opportunity for us. And in fact, I would say that there is a really need for us from the point of view of security and the economic prosperity. And technologically, it also gives an opportunity because the 5G technology, most of the technology components are going to be, softwareized, increased use of softwareizations, increased use of network function virtualizations and slicing. And there is an opportunity for India to develop and deploy the technology for the world. So in terms of strategy, of course, R&D is happening at few leading institutes like IITs and ISC. There is a need for collaborative research. There is a need for mission mode IPR creation strategies. And also, of course, we need to significantly enhance our capability. In terms of standardizations, we now have a gateway to participate and contribute to the beyond 5G standards, but we need to significantly enhance our participation. I just showed you that the participations from countries like China and Europe is way far ahead than in India. And finally, of course, we need to encourage startups for product design and development and the prototype development. There is a small efforts that has been done as a part of the indigenous 5G testbed as a multi-IIT project. All IITs are involved: IIT Kanpur, IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, IIT Hyderabad, and IIT Delhi. And the goal of that is to enhance the 5G R&D capabilities in the country. In fact, this end-to-end 5G testbed has, the user equipments, the base stations, the core, and its integration with the Wi-Fi networks. Most of the components of this 5G testbed are ready, and we are really closely working with the few startups to see that some of these technologies can be commercialized. And I think there is really a need here for the government of India to emphasize, and help these companies commercialize these technologies. And now I will just take 5 minutes to tell you what dent we have made it in the standardizations. So when the 5G standards were developed, I just showed you that what is 5G. It will give you 20 gigabits per second peak throughput, and it also gives you the mobility of 500 kilometers per hour. But what is the need in India? Need in India is, most of the cities we cannot travel for more than 40 kilometers per hour. The need in India is that wireless has become the primary broadband mechanism, and we need, while we are sitting at our home, while we are participating in this webinar, we need such very high throughput. We don't have to need such high throughputs at 500 kilometers per hour. Okay, so we need limited mobility support. We don't need high-speed mobility. Okay, fixed access is the key. So this is one thing. Another thing, of course, is that we need low-cost solution. We want to have technology affordable. We want to have it affordable by everyone. In India, affordability is the key thing. And therefore, we need low-cost backhaul solutions. We need lower spectrum cost. Maybe we use unlicensed spectrum wherever possible. Our rural countries, we need large coverage area support. We need to really have large population covered, spread over several kilometers in the rural areas. And finally, we need energy efficient solutions. Whenever in the Western world they talk of energy efficiency, they always talk of energy efficiency of the cell phones. They want to make it, highly battery efficient. They never think of the energy efficiency of the base stations, because base stations are always connected to the electricity grid, and there is really almost, 24/7 availability of the electricity supply. We need solutions where the base stations can work on batteries, where the base stations can work with the low powers. And that is where, these are the technological challenges. Okay, and we took these challenges to the standards bodies. In fact, affordability, local content generations, connectivity to rural areas, manageability, limited mobility, use of renewable energy, all this has led to the new IEEE standards that is coming up, P2061, that refines the vision of what we call as the frugal 5G. Okay, so that is where our efforts have been. This is a new standard that is being dictated from the Indian country. So I think that is what some small dent we made. A major dent we made it in the 5G was to define the low mobility large cell configurations in ITU. And that is the very similar to Frugal 5G, where we are saying that our rural enhanced mobile broadband is not just about 500 kilometers per hour. It is low mobility, but large cell. Okay, so a large base station should be able to cover a large area, and we need a very high throughput when we are sitting at home, when we are moving on maybe a bicycle, or maybe we are moving in a car at 40 kilometers per hour. We really don't need 200 megabits per second at 100 kilometers per hour. So peak user data rates we need, okay, but we need, most importantly, the sustained data rate and at a lower speed. So this also was accepted in the ITU, and this is really a small major dent that we were able to make it in the 5G and have our IPRs incorporated into the standards. But a lot more needs to be done, and that is where a strategy is needed. So what are the policy initiatives that were needed? The Government of India had set up a high-level 5G forum, and I was fortunate to chair the Spectrum Policy Task Force. We have given several recommendations in terms of the spectrum to the Government of India. We also suggested that an enhanced focus is needed on the standards participations. We also suggested that a focus is needed on the conducting a major trials and technology demonstrations in the country. And we also suggested that there is a need for setting up large-scale applications and use case labs. Finally, of course, we need certain regulatory interventions that are needed in order for the 5G technology to proliferate in the country. Of course, we have a significant telecom market in the country. We have a very large telecom operators with a very established base and 2 decades of experience of deployment. So we don't see any problem in terms of deployments, but we need a clear focus on the spectrum policy and a thrust for indigenous manufacturing in the country with the enhanced participation in international standards, so that the future technologies can be driven by looking at Indian requirements. And some of them I just told you: energy efficiency, low mobility but high throughput, and for the rural coverage. But there are several other such requirements as well, that will keep coming. I was also chairing a experimental spectrum allocation committee recently that has been notified by the Digital Communications Commission of the Government of India. And the outcome of that has been simplified acquisition process for the experimental license. The Honorable Prime Minister has always stressed for ease of doing business. In fact, this was a major thrust in terms of the ease of doing business and promoting experimentations, research, and innovations. So with all the components in place, now the government has India has a TSDSI, which is an organizational partner of 3GPP. So we can make contribution to standards. We now have a policy for experimental spectrum allocations where you can do the experimentations. We also are looking forward now for the thrust for the indigenous design, development, and manufacturing, so that the future networks can be driven by the Indian technology. So what is the way forward? We really need targeted innovations in 5G. We need enhanced focus on product design. We really need to nurture and support the product companies. And finally, as I said, we can really ride the softwareization base. All the 5G components are going to be developed, through software. We really don't need specialized hardware. Only the RF part, only the antenna and the RF front end will be the specialized hardware. The rest of the things can be everything implemented in the software on the commodity servers and the computers. We need increased exposure to global R&D ecosystems, and for that we need to facilitate and reward the participation in global SDOs. And all this needs to be done in a mission mode manner. So I think time is right now, and as I already mentioned, that we have missed the 2G, 3G, or the 4G bus. We have just got on into the 5G, and here is an opportunity for us to drive beyond the 5G technology. And this is important not just for me as a telecommunication engineers or the communications theorist or the scientist, but this is important from the policymakers, from the nation's perspective, for strategic security and economic prosperity, because as you know that the future wars will be fought in the cyber physical world only, and there is therefore a real danger of our country's sovereignty depending on the telecom infrastructures of beyond 5G technologies. So I think it is important that we take it, in all that earnestness and work towards it. It is our collective responsibility. So thank you very much. I will be happy to answer, any questions which are there.
Thank you so much, Professor Abhay. Indeed, it is like, especially from Indian perspective, how is this 5G is making, we are progressing. Indeed, it is great. I will request Vijeta Vijeta has collected some questions from the audience and probably she'll share with us. Vijeta, over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for this for giving us a holistic understanding of this 5G technology world. So we have a lot of questions coming in. So I'll just read out the questions one by one. So I think one of the first questions that have come in is how 5G can help agriculture and rural areas. So if you want to comment on that.
Yeah. So, so first of all, in the rural areas, the broadband, of course, we need the connectivity. And as I already mentioned, that some of the innovations that have happened in rural areas for coming up with energy efficient solutions and high throughput at low mobility will really give a very enhanced broadband experience in our villages. So I think so that will sort of address our broadband problem. In agriculture, increasing use of sensors is coming up in precision agriculture. For example, for measuring the soil moisture contents, and from that, determine, very precise amount of fertilizers that needs to be given, so that we don't really spend over fertilizations we do, which actually, as you know, is harmful. So we really do world is moving towards a precision agriculture, and these sensors and this technology is becoming now very cost effective. But with the underlying communications infrastructure cost, if that becomes affordable, then these kinds of technologies will become affordable even by our small and medium farmers. So in that sense, the technology has a use, of course, with the normal broadband things, but also in terms of a precision agriculture.
Thank you, sir. I think this is especially relevant given that AnanthKumar ji's work has extensively been in the sector of agriculture with regards to fertilizers and pesticides. And if 5G technology is helping even in this aspect, that is something I think truly commendable. I would also like to welcome some of the guests that have joined here. Professor N.K. Goyal, sir, the chairman of TDEMA, is here with us today. Welcome, sir. We have Professor Chitra Ravi, the head of computer science of Amandi College. Welcome, ma'am. We have Shri Raghavendra Bhatta, director of NIANP, Bengaluru. I would like to welcome you, sir. Quickly moving to the next question. The impact on 5G on education delivery, especially in terms of quality and affordability. This is a question that has been.
Yeah. So I think, as I already mentioned, that affordability is the key component of the communications technology in our country's context. And as I mentioned, that wireless has become the primary broadband mechanism. Most of us, because we don't have ubiquitous fiber availability, unlike in the Western world, where fiber is there to each home, and most people access the broadband when they are sitting at home through the fiber. In India, most of the people access the broadband through the cell phones or the wireless dongles, and therefore affordability is the key thing. And we believe that once the 5G technology is proliferated, it will not only become affordable, but it will give a user experience that will be very similar to fiber to the home kind of an experience. So therefore, obviously, it will help in having a a good customer experience in terms of online education, which obviously people these days find with the 3G kind of a systems not so satisfying.
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. We have another interesting question on while how 5G is the 5th generation for humans, it is 1G for machines in terms of IoT. Is this true, and would you want to elaborate on this?
So it is not 1G for machine, it may be for 2G for machine-to-machine communication. Machine-to-machine communications is also possible in 4G. But the thing is, the 5G will also give you what we call as ultra reliable low latency communication. So it can really reduce the latency in a very, very significant way. And plus it can enable you to connect fairly large number of devices per square kilometer than what is possible in the 4G. So this gives you an opportunity to give an order of magnitude enhancement than 4G. So in that sense, it is a second generation for machine-to-machine communications.
Right, sir. Thank you. I would also like to welcome Dr. Kadadevaramat, AnanthKumar ji's friend. He has set up about over 100 libraries in Karnataka. Welcome, sir. Moving on to the next question, sir. There have been several questions actually on what impact 5G could possibly have on the health of humans and animals. So would you like to comment on that, sir?
Let me just tell you that the radio frequency spectrum is from few kilohertz to, we go to few, several terahertz and go up to X-rays and gamma rays. So in between, the sunlight also form parts of the, electromagnetic spectrum. Now, in this electromagnetic spectrum, there is a part which is called non-ionizing radiations. So the non-ionizing radiations are what these radio frequency spectrums are, whether they are used for FM radio or for television broadcasting or for mobile communications. But as the frequency increases, the wavelength decreases. So, when the frequency becomes really very large, then the wavelength almost becomes like a particle. It takes the shape of a particle, and we enter it into the ionizing radiations. So these ionizing radiations, that means X-rays or gamma rays, they pose risk to the human health, because they can really mutate genes in the humans, and therefore can have an effect of causing diseases like cancers, etc. And therefore you have to avoid exposures to X-rays or gamma rays. But as far as you are there in the radio frequency spectrum, they are all non-ionizing. So they only have an effect of heating. So that means, when these electromagnetic waves fall on your body, you will feel heating effect. So if you are using cell phone for a long time, maybe you will feel heated here, okay? But other than the heating effects, they really have a, physics-wise, they really cannot have the ionizing, they don't have the ionizing properties. So as long as the power levels are low, and which are low in the case of mobile communications, I don't see that any of these communications pose any risk to human health in that sense. Okay. But yes, as I said, they have an effect of dielectric heating, so you will feel heated, and that effect is same when you stand in the sun, when you feel heated, that effect. And if you are using a cell phone just to the ears for a long time, and if you are feeling heated, that effect is the same. That is explained by the same effect.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that answers several questions that are coming in. I would like to welcome Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji, who has joined us and has taken out some valuable time from his busy schedule. Welcome, sir. It is an honor for us to have you here. I would call upon I would like to call upon Sujit Kumar ji to welcome Rajeev Chandrasekhar, sir.
Warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so much for taking out some of the time for this our session here from your busy schedule. We had a wonderful session. Hello, I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay. We had a wonderful session by Professor Abhay Karandikar on 5G, how, and especially from the perspective that how is that going to impact the Indian lifestyle. I'll put it like this in different aspects here, sir. And at this point of time, our audiences are very eager to hear from you about in terms of policy. How is that government policies are impacting this for 5G, especially from the opportunities and readiness perspective. How are things are happening from government sides? Our audience will be very, very happy to hear it from you, sir. Before I just hand it over mic to you, sir, just give me I'll just a brief introduction. Let me share a brief introduction. Rajeev Chandrasekhar is a third-term MP representing Karnataka and one of the leading technology and governance advocates in Parliament. His 30+ years in technology has included being a key part of Intel's path-breaking 8486 and Pentium microprocessor in the Silicon Valley to building one of India's first and largest cellular mobile company and helping create today's vibrant cellular industry. He has a master's in computer science and honorary DSc. Rajeev is a computer scientist and as a tech entrepreneur, he has invested and built many more valuable brands since. In Parliament, he has a solid record of activism and advocacy, ranging from raising 3 scam NPAs to issue of veterans and armed forces like OP, National War Memorial, OROP of technology governance issue like net neutrality, privacy, freedom of speech, etc. Nevertheless, he is a son of Air Force veteran and holds his childhood spent around far-flung Air Force stations and living amongst men and families who served as a defining influence on his life mission. Sir, over to you, Rajeev.
No, thank you for that warm welcome. And I apologize for this delayed entry into this. I had an earlier meeting that was dealing with a more pressing urgent problem of the COVID and how we could, as in government and as public servants, do more to help the people that are suffering. So I'm sorry, but you will have to forgive me because it was an important cause. Let me first of all thank you, Tejaswani ji, and everybody at the AnanthKumar Pratishthana for inviting me. Every time I engage with you, it takes me back, and I have to start every conversation with the 2 decades odd that I knew AnanthKumar ji. A lot of people have shaped my life in many ways, but he was an important person who shaped my life in public life. And a lot of his thoughts still remain embedded in me, how I approach my politics even today. He was the first one who brought the phrase to my attention of nation first. He was the first politician and political leader who I heard actually use that phrase with some meaning and with some deep feeling. As you know, most of you know, in politics, there are many people who use slogans and ranging from Garibi Hatao and Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and many politicians use slogans. But I think with AnanthKumar ji, Nation First was a very important, deeply felt feeling and deeply felt ethos and values that he held very close to his heart. And I hope some of that I have derived from him. So thank you to the AnanthKumar Pratishthana and Tejaswini ji, you, Professor Bhatt, Dr. Srinath, thank you for doing a wonderful job of building this organization and keeping not just his memory, but his values and principles in public life alive. And thank you for, of course, associating me with that in some small way. Look, on the topic today of 5G, and I'm sorry I missed, Professor, your conversation on this. I would have loved to have a conversation on this. It is for many months and years, 5G and technologies like 4G or 3G were just a number for somebody in the Ministry of Telecommunication to think of a faster way of an internet. And thanks to some of our work in 2008 and 9, became another opportunity for auctioning spectrum. So for many years, G, whether it is 2G or 3G or 4G or indeed 5G for some years, some months, had become, oh, here is a new technology, here is a new spectrum, the government would auction the spectrum, government would make money. If there is a smart telecom operator, he would somehow game the system, get the spectrum cheap. If there was another not so smart operator, he will auction, buy the spectrum, and then figure out a way of delivering some new services. But I have argued for some months and some years now that 5G, and I argued this before the COVID crisis, and it takes on a certain deeper significance after COVID because of the overall tectonic changes in the global politics and global geopolitics. I argued before COVID that 5G was not just about another faster mobile technology. 5G represented the 5th generation in consumer mobility technologies, but represented the 1st generation in machine-to-machine technologies. So it marks not just a natural evolution of 2G, 4G to 5G. It is a very disruptive step function change in the way mobility has evolved. So 5G has to be understood as something very different. It takes the whole Internet 2.0, takes the Internet and completely transforms in almost certainly a disruptive way what the future of the Internet will be and for what the future of businesses, technologies, and indeed machine-to-machine communication will be. And there are many consequences of that flow from it that impact the consumer that were not naturally obvious before 5G. Privacy, data protection, identity theft, many issues like that become far more real and pronounced issues after the proliferation of 5G or the launch of 5G. So that is one in terms of the overall what 5G meant. The other important issue that I mentioned way before COVID and becomes particularly important in the context of post-COVID is the strategic ownership of the technology 5G, as well as the overall future of the internet and emerging technologies on the internet. Now, at this stage, I'll just take you back to 2010. And most people in India are not aware that in 2010, China led an attempt to move the control of the internet away from the from the US, and move it to a United Nations bureaucratic organization called the UN-CERT. And you would be surprised that the pioneers for that were with China, were Saudi Arabia, all paragons of free speech and freedom and democracy, obviously, and one other country that solidly backed it at that time, India. And it was one of those complete ironies that India was joining ranks with China, which is now post-COVID enemy number one to the world and the biggest threat to free open societies, that India would have tied up with China to move the control and regulation of the internet from being an open, independent network to something that the United Nations and a group of bureaucrats sitting in Geneva would control. And of course, at that time, some MPs, including myself, protested vehemently about this, and the Manmohan Singh government had to back off of supporting that. Now, why I bring this issue is in the second context, second point that I want to make about 5G is about the future of the internet. There is growing realization after COVID that the future of internet, the future of technologies that sit on the internet and will sit on the internet, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of these things that are going to determine the future of our lives should be controlled by or regulated by or influenced by open democracies and open societies rather than authoritarian countries like China. That's the second point I wanted to make. And the third point is that in India particularly, we have been blind consumers of technology and have become a company where the platforms are inherently from abroad, whether it is radio, whether it is switching, or any of the other technologies that go into a network, broadband, and we develop these services on sitting on top of it, whether it's Airtel, Idea, Vodafone, whatever. And that 5G represents an inflection point in India's waking up to the fact that we needed some capabilities around the future of our networks, core and otherwise. So that is the third point I wanted to make. And the fourth point is that there is a broader issue, and this third point is really to do with R&D and design development capability and so on and so forth. The fourth point is the issue of the future of companies like BSNL that are in the public sector, that have significant amounts of our public monies invested in it. What happens to BSNL in a world of 5G? And so, I mean, I don't want to spend extraordinary amount of time on all this, but I have put this out, these 4 or 5 points, as the issues to which the government needs or public policy needs to have answers before we just blindly go out and do 5G. If you remember, what was going to happen before COVID was we were going to auction 5G spectrum, and a company called Huawei was going to walk in and effectively dominate, as they had almost done in the UK, dominate both the core and the basic access networks on 5G. And this is the same company, and we now know post-COVID, during COVID, that almost every Chinese product that is linked to technology is today gathering data and gathering information about consumers in total violation of any data protection or privacy regulations or rules or consideration of any consumer privacy, and exporting it back to China, where China is working on terabytes and terabytes of data to create algorithms, to create artificial intelligence that are based on those algorithms, and creating all kinds of other products and services that they hope to dominate the future of the internet with. So this was what was the scenario in before COVID and late 2019. Fortunately, the Prime Minister of this country, our country, Narendra Modi ji, and he took a deep look at 5G and said, we will not just blindly go into this, and we will think of a strategic roadmap that consists of a number of various issues, before we go into 5G. And like I said, first is about dominant power of carriers and competition landscape. Do you want just 2 networks to control all 5G? Do you want more choice for consumers? The laws and regulations of India today are all 2 decades old. I mean, just to give you an input for all of you who are interested, we are in the world of the internet, and most of our technology laws have been legislated in early 2000. The TRAI Act was last amended in 2000. The IT Act that was amended last in 2008. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, there was no internet like we have today. 12 years ago, there was we still talked about mobile phones and basic phones. So the legislative, regulatory, legal framework that governs technology and innovation today is about 2 decades old, or at least a decade and a half old in this country. So there is a second requirement of creating a more modern, more contemporary legislative framework, a legal framework that allows innovation, that allows consumers to enjoy various services, but also at the same time protects consumers from those who try and exploit their privacy, exploit their data to their detriment. Going forward, we need to redefine the ecosystem as we understand it from mobile operators, cellular operators, and maybe 1 or 2 people who give, 1 person who gives fixed services, to an ecosystem that consists of M2M, machine-to-machine operations, people who deliver services that are machine-to-machine services, and M2M, B2M, M2C. We don't know what that landscape will be like. So to try and predict it, to try and architect it, sitting in a bureaucrat's room, sitting in Delhi or in the Sanchar Bhavan, is really going to be the wrong way to do it. So we should create an enabling framework where the spectrum is available, different types of services are broadly defined, and create a legislative and an innovation framework that allows these things to proliferate. Last 2 points that public policy needs to address is the issue of trust. The trust as in whose network, whose equipment, whose carrier and broadband and access networks do you trust? And therefore, the concept that has been started in the US and that has been adopted in India of having a safe network, a trusted network, which will automatically mean that we will adopt more software-centric architectures for these networks rather than hardware. So open RAN systems, which is the radio access networks, which are virtual RANs that sit on top of servers rather than just pure hardware that, like the way the Huawei and the traditional telecom infrastructure players operate. So the ability to move into areas and architectures of technology, given the computing power that is existing, that are much more open rather than proprietary. And the last thing that public policy will have to address before we successfully launch 5G is the role and the future of BSNL. The BSNL is currently India's strategic operator. It is a public sector unit that delivers critical infrastructure, critical network capacity to the government, the security agencies, and all of that. So what happens to BSNL? What should be the role of BSNL? Should it be the M2M operator in the country? Should it be one of the M2M operators in the country? So there are many of these things that the public policy will have to address because of the fundamental point that I made at the top of my conversation, which is 5G is not just a faster 4G. And 5G is not just a faster 3G. 5G is the first generation of the future of the internet. And I like to say that again and again, especially I have a much easier task communicating that concept to an audience like this, rather than the difficulty in communicating this concept to bureaucrats and my colleague politicians in Delhi, which is if I try and tell them 5G is something other than just a faster 4G, it's not as easy for them to understand. But that is what it is. It marks a great opportunity for India to be a player. For example, in the Open RAN architecture, the biggest players, biggest startups for that are in India. The largest amount of innovation, the smartest innovations for the Open RAN networks that now Qualcomm and all of these companies abroad are increasingly adopting as open 5G architectures are being done in Bangalore, are being done in Hyderabad. So India has trailed strategic technology ownership for many, many decades. And this 5G marks, in my opinion, a great opportunity to India to leapfrog 2.5, 3 decades of being buyers of technology to being active architects, active creators of the future of the internet. And the future of the internet has to be, India has to have a role, a significant role beyond Flipkart, beyond Amazon.com, beyond Uber, beyond Ola. We can't be application level providers or application level consumers of the internet. We have to start being players in the core of the internet. We have to become players in the future of the architecture, technology, and evolution of the internet. And I think 5G is an opportunity for us to do it. And I hope, of course, we are all nation first Indian citizens here, following AnanthKumarji's thought and ideals and principles. And I think collectively, that is the call we should make, which is that India should be no longer just a consumer and a buyer of technologies. India should be an architect and constructor of the future of the internet. And that's all I had to say today. Thank you for the time, and I hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajeev ji. I must say that you have nicely complimented my thoughts and echoed many of my feelings exactly the same way.
And I hadn't even heard you before, so
yes.
nobody can accuse us of collaborating.
Yes,
absolutely. In fact, Professor Abhay mentioned how is that it will create India's like in terms of lifestyle. And sir, you mentioned about encouraging words about how is that India can be the leader in terms of the startup, in terms of other things. It's like indeed encouraging words. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajeev ji. Tejaswini here. Thank you so much for taking out time. I understand the pressure you have today. It's really, we are going, we are in a very difficult times.
It was my boss, Nadda ji said 4 o'clock meeting karenge, so we have to listen to our bosses.
Yes, no, I understand. But it was wonderful, especially your experienced talk, you have shared it, and I'm sure you are the right connect between the academia and the industry and the bureaucracy and leadership. And thank you so much for coming here. And we would definitely like to take it forward. In fact, many of the we have in our panel today a lot of professors, head of departments, principals have attended, and I have requested them, why not you take this debate forward. And probably India is one of the biggest countries in the world with highest number of engineers and also people with very high IQ. And definitely this will definitely motivate them, and in each institution can take this dialogue forward and come out with startups and also their inputs and change the graph what Dr. Abhay Karandikar was showing, because India was not visible at all in the R&D of 5G. I think it's the onus is on us to change that graph. That's what I felt. Thank you, both of you.
I just add one thing, Tejaswini. One thing that COVID has taught us today. I mean, it's a bad phrase to use about learning from a tragedy like this. But one thing we have learned, especially in the last 48 hours, when the US administration has talked about not relaxing export controls on the key ingredients for vaccines, which we need for expanding our own production capacity. This has taught us one basic reality, that in trying times, in challenging times, we have to dig deep in ourselves to fend for ourselves as a country, as a community, as individuals, as families, whatever. And it is proved to us by the fact that US, which so-called partner of ours in democracy and we are the largest democracy, richest democracy, bye, hugging all the time, all that And then when push comes to shove, when we are saying that, look, we want to expand our vaccine capacity, we have 1 billion people that we need vaccinated, the US turns around and says, no, sorry, we can't do that. So technology, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, these are all areas that the Prime Minister's call for AtmaNirbhar Bharat is not just a slogan, it is a strategic imperative. And I think these areas that we just have to dig deep as a people and find solutions for it ourselves.
Yes, yes, very true. I remember because even Shri Kota Harinaran and Padma Shri Kota Harinaran is there in the panel. I remember in '98 when the sanctions for the LCA, when the US made the sanction on us. In fact, we developed the entire solution for LCA, and it became 100% indigenous. If they would not have put sanction, probably would not have done it. We would have imported some of those softwares. Like you said, now it is, we have all the potential. We have to get up and do it. Yeah, very, very rightly said. Yes.
Thank you.
Vijeta, what next?
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing us. I would like to, for the benefit of those who have been joining the session a little bit late, I would like to briefly summarize the key ideas that both Professor Karandikar said and also Chandrasekhar ji has said. Karandikar sir has actually showed us how different sectors in every single sector, whether it's agriculture or whether it's defense, will truly be impacted by 5G, and how the idea of IPR, the fact that it's time for us to take hold of the IPRs that will be crucial in the coming days, is something that is eye-opening. This idea also has been echoed by Chandrasekhar ji with regard to strategic importance and how 5G will play an important role in that. Going forward, also, of course, artificial intelligence is something that will control several aspects of our life, and that makes it even more important for us to step up and take hold of the IPR and the future of internet, like Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji has said. Going forward, of course, there are important contributions by Professor Karandikar, like starting of TSDSI, the telecom standardization that has been started just now in India, where we often lag in creating these standardizations. I think he is truly playing a pivotal role in that. And given that India is the second largest telecom consumers, it is important for us to now also become players of the creation of this technology, as well as flag bearers of what would be done and what is not in this sphere. With regard to, of course, Karandikar sir also mentioned some of the drawbacks or some of the gaps that exist, like the gap between academics and policymakers, which here we surprisingly see the opposite happening, as Rajeev ji has almost echoed every idea that Professor has mentioned. And also, it's important to note how Karandikar sir spoke about the impact of 5G in rural areas and how it will reach every last person in India. And it's interesting to see how it's not just about speeding of the internet, but also providing prolonged and reliable internet service for every last person in the country. Of course, apart from this, Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji has showed us about the various aspects with regard to policy that is important here, because any technology that has such a big impact on the society definitely has a huge impact on policy, and policy has a huge role to play in this. Like you said, sir, 5G is not a faster 4G. it is the first generation of the future of the internet. That is something that at the core that we need to understand. And as Karandikar sir said, that we would require many more softwares, and there'll be softwareization. It's only we can see this as a positive thing, and that India can take up this baton to only contribute to the technology. I would especially, to conclude, I think both the speakers mentioned about how it's significant to build standardization as well as to build trust among the users, and of building becoming players of this new inflection of technology that is coming up. I would like to express my heartfelt regards to both Professor Karandikar sir as well as Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji for coming to this program and helping us understand and truly understand both the technology side and the policy side of 5G technology. Moving forward, we have been flooded with questions. Due to the lack of time, I promise all the participants that we will collect answers and reach back to you. With interest for time, I would like to pass on the mic to Pradeep Oak sir. He is the CEO of Oak Systems and executive committee member of AnanthKumar Pratishthana for vote of thanks.
Namaste. First of all, thank you all this so you had I think you have to also thank you and so Cellular here. I think you lead the way. I think the lead center is create right policy. India.
Sorry, Pradeep ji, will you put your video off? I think you can put your video off. No, not very clear.
The voice is feeble. Well, you can bring mouthpiece closer to your mouth.
Yeah, you please put your video off.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can continue.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Seems to be. Yeah, seems to be some problem waiting for 5G. 5G is very much required.
This is probably a Bluetooth mouthpiece issue. This is not.
It's not 4G.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yes, Vishnukhan ji can, yeah, please.
I wanted to congratulate Abhay Karandikar for the reason being taking initiative in bringing India at the international forum. So unless
Thank you.
Abhay Karandikar and his team would not have taken effort, India's presence in the international would not have been there. TSDSI, and today is an opportunity, sir, where Rajeev Chandrasekhar's support is required at a large extent. because technology has to be pushed by a techno bureaucrat and politician and a businessman. All in one you can see in only Rajeev Chandrasekhar, sir. So people with intellectual background like Abhay Karandikar and people with AnanthKumar who have been associated where nation is the first. As AnanthKumar Pratishthana, I take it my privilege and my duty to convey my heartfelt thanks to both of you for making it happen. And I think we will continue this dialogue on the other fora, sir. And we would also require support from both intellectually and policy wise for AnanthKumar Pratishthana by Rajeev Chandrasekhar and Abhay Karandikar, sir. So it's also my ardent duty to convey my heartfelt thanks to all the people, Sujit and others who have made this happen, and all the participants. And when there is a seamless approach in the system, if technology is going to create a problem, human relation will not create a problem. So if Pradeep has not been able to deliver the vote of thanks, I am delivering because there is human interface which is more bonded in the organization, that we have grown together, and we take it as our responsibility to build the organization through human interface and machine interface. Tejaswini ji has been a continuous inspiring person behind all these activities. It's my also a duty to convey my heartfelt thanks to Tejaswini, and Vijayta has done excellent anchoring today. So she has also worked as the president of the function where she has summarized also. So excellent new generation leadership is coming. So I thank all the participants on behalf of AnanthKumar Pratishthana. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam, all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
ಆಯ್ತು. ಪ್ರದೀಪ್ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ ನಿನ್ನೆ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಹೆವಿ ಇದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ್ಬೇಕಪ್ಪ, ಹೀಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಏನೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಯಪ್ಪ? ಯಾರೇನ್ ಹಿಡಿದಿಲ್ಲ ನಿನ್ಗೆ ಬರುವಾಗ? ಅಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ